We're going to go to this next story about Bernie Sanders, speaking of policing, because it appears that Bernie Sanders is not only a snitch, but Bernie Sanders is a cop. Now, recently I was in DC to cover the Peace in Ukraine rally, anti-war rally. I thought it was a great rally. There was a follow-up to that particular event the next morning, and that was to protest at Congress and basically to push back against people like Bernie Sanders and him choosing to fund Ukraine. So I couldn't attend that event because I left that next morning, so I wasn't able to attend that event. But I felt like this was the right thing to do. Because the thing is, remember when AOC protested outside Nancy Pelosi's office? You got to go directly to these people. So with Bernie Sanders and all his rhetoric and yada, yada, at the end of the day, when it came time to vote for war, Bernie Sanders is voting for it. So Code Pink, they led this event to protest in Bernie Sanders' office. Bernie Sanders decided that he should arrest people. So Medea Benjamin had a speech here. I want to go ahead and play this because, again, I believe with holding people accountable, holding politicians accountable, go directly to the source. So that's exactly what they did. I want you to hear what Medea Benjamin said in reference to Bernie's decision to continue to fund Ukraine. Listen to this. Now, this is them at that follow-up event in Congress.
We must work hard to achieve a realistic and mutually agreeable resolution, one that is acceptable to Ukraine, Russia, the United States, and our European allies. So let's sit down, let's negotiate, and let's come up with a diplomatic solution.
That is Bernie Sanders' own words. Those are Medea's words. Those are Bernie's words. So what they're doing is they're holding Bernie Sanders' own rhetoric against him. Remember when you said this, Bernie?
That is the good Bernie. Yeah. That's the Bernie we want. Not the other Bernie who is okaying billions and billions of dollars in weapons and says you can't talk to Putin. And we have one word answer to Bernie when he says you can't talk to Putin, because he said that to us. We say, try. Right? Try. We want to see what the result of Biden talking to Putin is, right? We want to hear that. We want to know that they've had not one conversation, lots of conversations. We want Bernie to call for a ceasefire and for peace talks. And I don't think that's too much. I think others will follow. We're going to go to the offices of the squad today. We think that the Democrats would be with us if it was a Republican White House.
Think about what Medea just said there. See, this is partisan politics at its finest, ladies and gentlemen. She just told you the Democrats would be with them if it was a Republican House. But because it's not, like, for example, if it was Trump that was in the White House, right? They would actually probably be in favor of what Medea and her group is doing. But because Joe Biden's in the White House and he's a Democrat, the Democrats that are in Congress are going to be silent. They're going to comply. They go along with Democrat Party leadership. Another one of the dangers of partisan politics. This is the problem with the parties. This is why people like Roger Meadows continue to say, abolish all political parties. Because as long as you're a part of a party, you're going to go along with the party for the most part. You may have a few outliers, but for the most part, you're going to go along with the party. This is also the reason why the founding fathers did not want political parties. They thought it would be a bad idea. Let's continue.
Really do feel that way. We feel that for Democrats, this is a partisan issue, and that we would have Bernie with us all the way if there was a Trump or another Republican in the White House. We would have the squad with us. We would have Barbara Lee with us. But unfortunately, when they came out, as you know, the 30 Democrats in the House who came out and said we want negotiations, they were just stomped upon by their own party, by Nancy Pelosi and others in their party, and told, this is a security issue that belongs to the administration. You be quiet about it. You follow along the lines. There's elections coming up. And
okay. So you heard what she said. There's elections coming up. So this is how it works. So the thing is that I also want to bring to attention, I have a couple more clips that I want to show from that event as well, because it gets crazy. But the thing is that, you know, are you anti-war or not? You know, are you anti-war when the president is the opposing party? That's when you're anti-war. That's when you're against it. Barbara Lee, who she mentioned, remember Barbara Lee voted against the Iraq war. Her and Bernie Sanders. How's Barbara Lee been since then? Because it seems like to me, after that decision was made, Barbara's kind of gone along with Democrat Party leadership. Sounds like Barbara had a talking to. You don't see it today. Now, Bernie Sanders apparently was not happy about this. So Bernie Sanders decided to call the cops on his own supporters. These people, these were Bernie supporters. These ain't Trumpers. These aren't LaRoucheites. Because for people who say, well, Jose's a part of LaRouche and he supported Trump, you can't use that excuse this time. These are people who supported Bernie Sanders. And his response is, instead of facing the people and talking to the people face to face and hearing what they got to say, his response is to pick up the phone and call the damn cops. Bernie Sanders is a snitch. And I don't trust that man. You should not trust. No trust there. Anybody who would do that to their own supporters? Look at it. Watch this. Watch what happens to this guy.
thank you, Leo.
Why are you getting arrested?
We're holding up a sign, a quote from Bernie Sanders calling for negotiation. Bernie Sanders had me arrested for holding up his own quote.
You see that? So this is the quote that Bernie Sanders said. So what, keep in mind, all of them weren't arrested. Okay. So all of them were not arrested. Certain ones were arrested. They had this guy arrested because he was holding up Bernie Sanders' own quote. Apparently that was a problem for Bernie. Can you believe, let's think about this for a second. Can you guys believe we supported this guy? Can you guys believe we donated to this guy, canvassed for Bernie Sanders, knocked on doors for this guy? And Bernie, this is how he treats his supporters. So he's just holding up the quote.
Thank you, Leo.
Why are you getting arrested?
We're holding up a sign, a quote from Bernie Sanders calling for negotiation.
Calling for negotiations. That was Bernie Sanders' own words.
Bernie Sanders had me arrested for holding up his own quote.
Crazy, right? And I say this because some people still have faith in Bernie. Believe it or not. Some people still think, oh, he'll get on the right side. So Carla posted this. I want to share this as well. Bernie arrests nearly 10 activists who tried to meet with him to discuss peace in Ukraine. The police handcuffed activists simply for holding a sign quoting Bernie in 2022 when he said we needed diplomatic solutions. Now he says we need weapons and endless slaughter. Guys, that was only 2 years ago. Only 2 years ago. So it just, I don't know what to say. Like, we're not even talking about, he can't even come back and say, yeah, I said that, but that was like 15 years ago. That was 2 years ago. So you'll see here, here's the picture again of them holding up the quote from Bernie. And then I'm going to go to this video.
Do you have any comment? I'm from Vermont, and I voted for Bernie every time.
Let me hold on. We're going to go back. This woman right here is a Bernie Sanders constituent. So she supported him. And this is how Bernie Sanders has his own constituents arrested. Mm-hmm.
Vermonters want peace.
Do you have any comment?
I'm from Vermont, and I voted for Bernie every time from Congress on. I wasn't there when he was mayor, but I worked for him and his campaign. I believed in him, and he has crushed all my hopes.
And this is why you can't have a hero. And I know I've said this on the show multiple times, but I'll say it again. Nobody is coming to save us but us. There are no heroes. A lot of people look to Bernie as like a hero, a savior of sorts, right? I fell into that too. You can't do that. You can't do that. I said the same thing with Dr. West. Dr. West is running a campaign. RFK is running a campaign. Marianne Williamson, Claudia, a lot of people running campaigns. But what I say at the end of the day, they're not your heroes. We have to save each other. We do that over at RBN through mutual aid. We have the RBN chapters. That's how we help. We help people in our community and we organize. I got a food and clothing drive coming up in November. This is how we help each other. And you can support whoever you want to support politically, but never look at them as a hero. This is why she has that disappointment. Notice what she said. I believed in him.
All my hopes for some kind of sanity within this building.
He recently tweeted out that he wants to see more funding go to Ukraine a couple of days ago. Can I get your reaction to that?
I'm horrified. I'm horrified. I watched the carnage going on over there, and how can anyone say this is good? Cluster bombs. We're on the brink of nuclear war. How can he not? All the things he says, how can he not?
Why are they arresting you?
Thank you for holding up a sign, a quote from Bernie Sanders calling for dialogue. And in Bernie Sanders' office, they seem to suggest that war is solidarity, which is madness, how they're co-opting the language of peace and liberation to lead us to World War III. It's crazy. They're so out of touch, not just with the American people, but with the entire world. And this is
They're not out of touch. I want to correct him here. It's not that they're out of touch. They know exactly what's going on. They know what's the right decision, but they're following party leadership. Bernie Sanders is supposed to be an independent, but let's be real. He's basically a Democrat. He always caucuses with the Democrats. It's not like he stands alone on many things anymore. And he also follows Democrat Party leadership. So I wouldn't say that they're out of touch. They're not out of touch. We got to change this framing. We got to change this rhetoric. Bernie Sanders knows. Bernie Sanders traveled across this country talking to hundreds and thousands of people 2 election cycles in a row. Working class people, poor people. Bernie Sanders knows exactly what's going on. And he's been a politician for a long time. So it's not that Bernie is out of touch. Bernie is playing the Democratic Party game. So you got Bernie Sanders out there now saying we need to give them more funding. So for the people who continue to say that Bernie Sanders is anti-war, can you stop saying that?
is supposed to be the progressive hero.
Yeah, what do we need Bernie to do?
We really just need him to step aside and leave room for other people who are actually going to.
Let me rewind back. I want you to hear something that he just said. This is very telling. Remember what I told you about the hero part?
With the American people, but with the entire world. And this guy is supposed to be the progressive hero.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he just said? He said this guy is supposed to be the progressive hero. This is part of the problem. They look at him as a hero. He's not a hero. There is no hero in real life. The heroes are in the movies. It's Marvel Comics. It's DC. Those are heroes. Those people, those things aren't real. In real life, there are no heroes. So you see what he said? He said he's supposed to be the progressive hero. That's why he's so disappointed. Bernie Sanders is not your hero. Bernie Sanders is playing the Democrat Party political game. And that's why he's been able to stay there as long as he has. Because if Bernie was serious, really serious about a strong political revolution, Bernie wouldn't still have that seat. They would have made sure they pushed him out too. Let's call it what it is. Let's continue.
What do we need Bernie to do?
We really just need him to step aside and leave room for other people who are actually going to fight for us.
He said Bernie needs to step aside and leave room for people who are actually going to fight for us. That's not the solution. Anyone that comes in to Bernie's place, especially if they're running two-party, they come into Bernie's place. Once they get into that Senate, they either going to have to compromise or they're gone. Trust. There's a reason why some people don't get reelected. There's a reason why. Or they could just redraw his district like they did Dennis Kucinich and say, you're out. He's not focusing on the systemic problem. I appreciate their activism, their anti-war activism and all they do in reference to that. But I think he's not looking at the system. The political system is the problem. So Bernie retires, someone else takes that spot for Bernie. In order for them to keep that spot, they're going to have to play the game. That's how they keep that seat. So you have to change the system. And you change the system by getting corporate money out of electoral politics. That's how you change the system. As long as you got corporate money in electoral politics, the system itself is not going to change. It's all controlled by money. And that money comes from some pretty high, powerful places. There's a lot of dismantling that needs to happen, and removing an individual person is not the solution. The solution is to dismantle the fucking system. That's how you make that change. Let's continue.
Fight for peace, because he obviously isn't courageous enough to fight for peace.
Peace. Solidarity.
Okay, so that's another one of the clips that I wanted to show. And another one, because like I said, there was a lot of this. This guy, he's another one that is a Bernie Sanders constituent. Let's show his clip as well.
Why did you protest outside of Bernie Sanders' office?
To end the war in Ukraine, end U.S. funding for the war, no funding for war, funding for health care,
Jimmy Lee
housing.
from Burlington, Vermont. He's
South
a constituent
Burlington.
of Bernie Sanders getting arrested.
South Burlington, right here.
Oh no, Boo Boo Gang. This is a bad take on Bernie from Sabby. Oh no, the fuck it's not. Come on, because I got time today. No, the fuck it's not. Let's keep it real. I don't know if you some Bernie like supporter or whatever, but I'm not about that life. Bernie is exactly who I said he is. You can continue to be fooled by Bernie if you want to, but I will not. Get out of here with that bullshit. They kill me with this. Go back to defending your hero. Go back to defending your hero.
What are we demanding Bernie do, Jimmy?
We want him to end the war. Speak out against the war. If he spoke out against the war, it would make a huge difference. It would make a huge difference. He's lined up for using and abusing Ukrainians. And he's been supporting using and abusing Vermonters who live in the terrible noise zone of the F-35 at the airport. 115 decibel, F-35 taking off and landing in a city. It's a crime. And Bernie...
See, he's talking about some of the issues in Vermont. So it's not even just the Ukraine thing. He's talking about some of the decisions that Bernie's made that is affecting people in Vermont.
Supports that. He's the supporter of assaulting people.
We need peace.
1,000 children live in that noise zone. Any others?
Shame.
Yeah. So another Bernie constituent, and it just, woo. And then there's this woman here with the red hair. I think this was the first video that I saw when I realized like people were getting arrested. This woman here.
Bernie is for diplomacy. I'm here to remind him that he knows diplomacy is the right thing. He knows peace is the right thing. I'm here to tell him we need peace. He needs to call on Biden to go to the negotiating table. Don't tell us to Putin.
Okay, we're just telling another one arrested for holding Bernie's book.
So she said that Bernie Sanders needs to tell Joe Biden that diplomacy is the solution. And she said Bernie Sanders knows this.
They All right, let's get a picture holding Bernie's phone here.
While you get arrested.
This is Bernie.
Why are they arresting you?
Why are they
arresting you? For holding a sign?
Leslie, why are they arresting you?
All right, folks, if you're still blocking the hallway, it counts as demonstration.
You see this, guys? For holding the sign. These are Bernie Sanders' words. They're getting arrested for holding the sign.
Your crowd can take that commoding. And so just please get to one side for us. Just to one side.
Let the media the cameras go down.
Yeah, it was a doozy. Now I want to go to another clip because, like I said, there were a lot of these. And this is what I had to say to people because I'm serious about it. I said Bernie Sanders owes everyone a refund. He should be ashamed of himself. Instead of facing those who supported his campaigns, he calls the cops on them. And I stand by every word of that, goddammit. I stand by every word of that. Bernie Sanders owes all of you a refund. To any of you that donated money to him. Because this is, it was working class people primarily who supported Bernie Sanders campaigns. It was those small dollar donations, which he got a lot of. He had the most money in 2020. That came from us. He's a sellout and a clown. And I call it like I see it. You got to hold these politicians accountable. Now, we know I done said it for a wild time that Bernie Sanders is a fucking fraud. You mobilized all these people across this country, all that energy that you had, and you took it and just funneled it back into the Democratic Party. He was never serious about no damn political revolution. This was to keep you in the system. Fraud. So I stand by that. Owes people a refund. Now let me go to this particular image here from Medea Benjamin. Somebody made this cartoon. Love this cartoon showing Bernie having police arrest Code Pink founder and peace activist extraordinaire, Miss Jody Evans. Guys, look at can you see it there? Yeah. Look at this picture. I don't know who did this. Oh, it's down here. Ladoff 2023 mintpressnews.com. There's Bernie Sanders in his office holding the Ukraine flag. And it says, get this pacifist out of here. And that was Jody. That was the woman with the red hair that was getting arrested. And the cop here took the sign from her, which says Ukraine peace talks now. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, there was some criticism about this event other than the arrest. And that was this picture here with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So people saw this, and you guys know, you know how these Twitter streets are. So people saw this, and Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted it out. The war in Ukraine must end. Today, I met brave Code Pink activists who protested for peace in Bernie Sanders' office. He had 11 of them arrested. Peace and free speech shouldn't be a partisan issue. We don't agree on most things, but we do agree Congress should stop fueling the war in Ukraine. And this picture got a lot of people talking. There's Marjorie Taylor Greene taking the picture with Code Pink activists. Now, why were people mad about this? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Republican. And the Code Pink people, like I told you, those were Bernie supporters, right? So they support the Democratic Party. And people were like, how dare you guys take this picture with Marjorie Taylor Greene? So the organization faced criticism because of this picture. And they did issue a response. And they said that basically, long story short, that number one, it's not like they went up to her to protest with her, but she asked if she could take a picture with them, and they didn't know, really what to do. So they said, sure, why not? Went on to say that they do not agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene as being anti-war, because they said that while she is against the war in Ukraine, she supports other wars. And she also, when asked by Breonna Joy Gray, remember, Bree did ask her on Rising, she said, would you support a decrease in the military budget? Remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene said no. So they came out with a statement. Here's my take on this. If I were Code Pink, I don't think I would have issued that same statement. What I would have said is, Marjorie Taylor Greene is standing in this photo with us because she's against the Ukraine war. Instead of asking us why we took this picture with Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe you should be asking why the squad members and other Democrats who claim to be anti-war, why they're not trying to take a picture with us. That's how I would have said it. But because they faced some heat and they faced that criticism, they pushed back and was like, oh, wait a minute. No, we do not agree with her on da-da-da. No, bump that. We all know that. We know how she feel on different issues and stuff like that. You ain't got to agree with her when it comes to those other issues. But I don't think that was a good response, because the thing is this photo is very telling. You don't see AOC in this photo. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, whose office they were protesting at. Bernie Sanders called the cops on them. MTG didn't call the cops on them. So I wouldn't have given that response. But they got that pressure. They got that heat. I don't know if that was a good move, because the thing is, like, it's not just about the Democratic Party. It's about war, period. And right now, it seems like a lot of the Democrats that are in Congress are supporting the war. They're supporting the funding. So you got to find people who are agreeing with you about that no, we need to stop this funding. So for me, it's just kind of like, did you have a problem with it when you were taking the picture with Marjorie Taylor Greene? You probably didn't have a problem with it. You probably didn't see it as a bad thing until you were criticized for doing it. Stand firm in what you believe. If you felt that was the right thing to do, stand up for that. That's how I feel. Now, Bree actually interviewed one of the Code Pink activists, also who was with Dr. West at this time at that same event. I want to show you this clip here. That's also from Code Pink. See, this is the part where they said there's a difference between being anti-war and not wanting funding for Ukraine war. To be anti-war, you must be an internationalist. Danica explains more in an interview done before this video was taken. So listen to this. That's Danica.
You know, the Republicans aren't exactly against funding for Ukraine for the same reasons Code Pink is. They don't want to funnel all of this war money, you know, the Pentagon budget and foreign military aid, into things like that matter, like healthcare, accessibility, and that sort of thing.
I think it's a really important point, Danica, and I love to mention that when we had an opportunity to interview Marjorie Taylor Greene on this show, and I asked her more broadly whether she supported cuts to the military budget, she said no, despite being opposed to the war in Ukraine. So I do think it's important to ask conservatives where they do plan to spend the money in the interim.
You know, the Republicans aren't exact.
Yeah. So that was because Bree had reminded me of that. I remember that interview. So this was their Code Pink's defense there. And my whole thing is like, no, if you didn't think you were doing anything wrong when you took that picture, then don't like come back and feel like you need to apologize because you got criticism. There has been some confusion about an image that was taken with Code Pink volunteers and Representative MTG. MTG opportunistically approached our volunteers in a parking lot on the Hill, and she requested they take a photo together. Our volunteers weren't sure how to respond and immediately reached out to us about what happened after the fact. The picture was not initiated by our organization. But I say this, so what if it was? Like, you don't need to explain all this. You really don't. We will continue to organize against war and demand our resources be reinvested into human needs like housing, universal health care, and education. And then it goes on to say there's a difference between being anti-war and not wanting funding for the Ukraine war. To be anti-war, you must be an internationalist. So if it were me, I wouldn't have backtracked that. That's just me. I mean, it's just, look, it is what it is. I don't know. Don't give into that kind of pressure, man. Don't give into that, because people try to give me pressure often about things. And imagine if I gave into it all the time. Oh, you got to stand firm in what you believe or what you were doing was the right thing to do. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it should have been members of the squad asking to take those pictures with them. But they don't. They run away from people.